there! This is Cooper from Telepathic Bunny Comics. I am here tonight to do a small review of Ghostbusters Afterlife and give a little bit of a commentary as to why this movie is important, why I think it matters. Anyway, I already had a hokey pokey pop in and pop out, but that is what it is. If anybody comes in and has a question to ask, I'll be happy to answer it. I don't know what's wrong with my glasses tonight. Jeez. Anyway, I went and saw this movie with a friend of mine who is a very nostalgic 80s lady. She remembers Ghostbusters fondly. She did the video game. She did pretty much everything else. She's a needlepoint artist, so she has made needle points of Ghostbusters. So I was going with a fan, basically. She is one of the few people I know that likes Ghostbusters 2 more than Ghostbusters 1. So, yeah, she is a little deranged, but, you know. Anyway, she didn't even see 2016. Okay. She saw that dumpster fire coming from a mile off and said, nope. Anyway. So we went to first time we've been in a theater in months. We were happy to be there. You kind of forget the old feeling of it. This is a theater. You're going in and there's popcorn on the floor because evidently people can't put popcorn in a bag and keep it there. Weird, but anyway, so we went and saw it in the big theater. The large theater, the Dolby theater, with surround sound and the vibrating seats and everything, which, that could be fun. And went through an interminable amount of like early stuff, commercial stuff. Saw some pretty decent trailers. Saw the Morbius movie coming out. I hadn't seen the trailer for it, the new one. It's really looks impressive. I might actually go see that. I don't know. Saw the Spider-Man No Way Home trailer and got a little squee from beside of me. So in spite of myself, I think I'm going to go see that one. When the only person that'll go see movies with you is like, oh, I want to see it, She's a huge Tobey Maguire Spider-Man fan, so when she saw Alfred Molina and the Green Goblin, the Willem Dafoe Green Goblin, she was ready. She was into it. She was ready to go. So I'm probably gonna have to go see Spider-Man Far From Home, but it is what it is. It looks good. I mean, except Zendaya. If Zendaya were to end her career tomorrow and never do another movie, the humanity would be all no poorer for it. That's all I got to say. Most sequious, snotty screen presence I've ever seen. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. I'm here to talk about the movie. So, okay. So, the movie, the premise, the opening setup was really riveting. And it set up a mystery. The first part of it set up a mystery that they didn't answer. They didn't give any easy shortcut answers. They actually did a lot of suspense when it came to it. I was really impressed with the callbacks and some of the things that they seeded at the first and then came back to later. It's just good writing. It was good writing, and it was a send off, a really fitting moment at the beginning of it. Kind of set the tone. That's what you do. You set the tone with your first thing, and then what I was afraid of was I was afraid that the little girl that was kind of be set up to be the lead was going to be completely, totally fingernails on a chalkboard, because they really they didn't really show her in the trailer very well. It just she seemed like somebody that was just going to be annoying. Okay, and McKenna Grace, I think her name is. I didn't look it up, but I think it's McKenna Grace. And but I was really fascinated by her screen presence after a while. She really has a spark, but she's a very subtle actress for her age. Reminds me of who would be a good. Reminds me of Haley Joe Osment in Sixth Sense. Well, anything he did when he was a kid. She has a restraint uh, that you don't often see. Oh, wait a second. Got a visitor.
Like, yeah.
Mr. Wyatt Eastman. Hey, dude.
Hey, man. Long time no see.
Hey, you see the movie?
No, I haven't seen it yet. I literally just got off of work, but I was just jumping in to see what the feedback was.
Okay. Well, I started out the beginning of the movie was really solid. Set up a mystery that they continued through the movie. And I was talking about McKenna Grace, the young actress. You
Okay.
know, it's in all the trailers.
Mhm.
What did you perceive in the trailer of her? What did you think she was going to be?
The trailer, I kind of felt like, I mean, they did leave it vague enough where you did definitely have like a wait and see thing going on. You're
Right,
like, what's
right.
what's going on with this little girl here? Like, what's going on with
Yeah,
these other
yeah,
characters? And I mean, obviously in the back of the mind, you're like, it's Paul Rudd. It's gonna be
yeah,
hilarious.
yeah.
and
Right,
so you're
right.
just like, okay, that's worth the price of
But
admission.
but you thought when you saw that little girl that she was going to be like a poor like a weak point of the movie, right? In the trailer from the way they portrayed her.
I I kind of felt like they were. I think they were. I felt like they were setting it up like it was like a
Yeah.
clear tell. Like, hey, something
Right.
big is going on with this character. Not all is what
Right.
it seems.
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, that pretty much is what happened. That was a good perception on your part. But she had a really great screen presence. I just likened her to Haley Joe Osment. You know, uh, you remember he was a hell of a child actor. Jeez. But
Okay. Yeah.
she had that same emotional restraint, and
Right.
she would and this is not like a spoiler or anything, but she would tell these awful jokes all the way through the movie, and and uh, and it was like and her delivery was just deadpan. She didn't try to make it funny. You know, she understood. You know, she understood that this little girl can't tell a joke, but she's trying. You know, and you really felt that you felt like she wanted to try to make friends, and the first time she makes a friend, it's like there's a surprise to it. You know,
Oh, okay.
somebody
Yeah.
likes me. Somebody actually likes me. You know, which I found very compelling. You know, being somebody who's had that difficulty growing up.
Oh yeah, because
You
that it gives
know?
it kind of a payoff because it's like you see this person struggling to make a connection, and then when they do
Right.
make a connection, it's right for the audience
Yeah.
to see. So you're kind of
Right.
like, oh yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah. Well. See, I thought that there was gonna. I thought it was gonna be woke casting, because there's a little diversity in the cast or whatever. But the thing about it is, though, is the way they did it was the way you should do it, because these people that they got for these parts, they fit the parts. Uh,
Right.
you didn't feel like it was a part written for somebody else, and they shoehorned a different race character in, which happens. You can obviously tell this person is supposed to be a white person, and they'll shoehorn in like another race, and it's like they'll make these jokes that's a white person joke, and it's coming out of a black person's mouth. And it's
Right,
just like
right. That
you're
you
not,
know,
yeah,
that's
but
where I think you see that a lot,
yeah,
and
yeah,
I think it's. I mean, you can point to say Sandman, like that's a
yeah,
great example of that.
right,
It's like
right,
on one hand, I'm kind of looking at it like, you
yeah,
know, if Neil Gaiman's been wanting to have that movie out for years. That he wanted
Yeah.
to do a full-length movie and run it like
Right.
a series,
Right.
but if this is what he can get, and then they're like, well, one of your characters has to be more representative, and it's like they're a race
Yeah.
of eternal. It's like if you can understand the Celestials and you can
Mm-hmm.
understand they're just endless. I mean, the name is
Yeah.
literally endless. So, but yeah, and it's like if you read the books, it's like they turn into different races of people. So why would she be stuck as a
Right.
black person?
Right.
Whatever. I
Well,
know it's kind of apart from
what
the
killed me
point.
about that though was that he was the one we were re-quoting him because he made the statement that, well, if fans see this person and they are this race and you switch it, then don't be surprised if they complain. And then that sucker turns around and does the same thing and then like defends it.
That's
That was I lost respect for him for that. I really did.
when you're staring on those kind of zeros, I mean,
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Where's your integrity at? It's not like he needs that money. The guy's a multi-millionaire. If he threatened to take his toys and went home, then they would have caved. But it's obvious that he was okay with it. But
oh
you
yeah,
just said this about somebody else doing it and said it was disingenuous, but then you did the same thing. But
mm-hmm.
but in this movie, you could tell that the person who wrote it, and they got these kids cast for it, but they wrote for those kids. You could tell that there was writing for those
Mm-hmm.
kids because, especially the little Asian kid, I can't remember his name. I didn't look up the cast, but he is funny. He is funny, but you could tell because they wrote for his timing. Yeah,
Absolutely, yeah.
yeah,
Okay, I'm looking forward to it. That was one of the
right,
reasons I
right.
came on the casting or the show here because
Yeah,
I was like, man, like
yeah,
I'm. It's like you want to believe. You're like, it's
right.
Ghostbusters. I want to be there. I
Yeah,
want to be
I
in
felt
that if
that.
it's
I
good.
felt that. Every time I saw the trailer, I was almost angry. I was almost angry. I'm like, if you screw this up, man, if you screw this up, I was like, violence, violence, if you screw this up. But because you wanted it to, I wanted it to be so good, and they did the connective tissues. They did not do shortcuts. Everything that happened had a logical progression. A lot of times you see hack jobs in the writing where there's no connective tissue, and yeah, they moved the kids forward, and the kids did some things that were just a little bit. You thought, well, that's a little fast for that to happen, but they also added in an element that helped you see that little girl how she can make these leaps, and it leaps in figuring out the technology and things like that,
Oh,
and
absolutely, yeah.
and yeah, they found a way to make it seem feasible.
Okay.
That it didn't take me out of the movie, but there's also the element of callback to the first movie. If you're gonna do that, this is the template, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I mean, I was in there with tears just streaming down my face at one point because they did something so incredible. I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but they did something so incredible I didn't know was possible, and
Oh wow.
I didn't
Now,
know it
now I
was
do gotta see
possible.
it.
Yeah, yeah, and I wasn't the only one that said the the Geeks and Gamers guy, Jeremy. He came. He had an entirely different take on it, but he mentioned that at the end. He says, "You're gonna cry. You're gonna cry," and I was like, "Okay, well, all right. I've steeled for it. I know this is gonna happen." But when it hits, when it happens, and the way they do it, Niagara Falls, Niagara Falls. Nerd tears, nerd tears.
Right, right. This actually kind of reminds me of like that little exchange I had not too long ago where you
Yeah,
were talking about you said, "Hey, I'm open to the competition," because I was like, for anybody who
right.
on the stream who wants to know, like I got a
Hmm.
podcast I'm working on. It's called
Yeah.
Meanwhile,
Okay.
the
Okay.
comics
Yeah.
podcast, and
Right. Right.
I was literally watching a video about this kind of thing, like
Yeah,
right before
yeah,
this stream, and what they were talking about was it was a screenwriter's interview,
yeah,
and he's basically talking about, you know, mechanically, like you said, where you have the
yeah.
tissues connecting into the story, but the
Right.
big thing that and I'm kind of curious to what your assessment
Okay.
on this video is that he said essentially, I'm trying to make sure I remember it right, but he was
Okay.
saying, okay, point to point, you can
Yeah.
write a story.
Right.
Point to point, you can write about a character arc. But he's
Yeah.
like, that isn't the story. He's like,
No,
that is the plot. That
that's the
is the
plot.
characterization. He's
Yeah.
like, your story is that character's reactions, what's
Right.
going on in their head. That's what brings you in, you know,
Yes.
and
Yes.
and that's kind of like where, you know, to kind of bring it all
Hmm.
around full circle is like,
Right. Right.
that's kind of what I'm looking to do. It's like, you know, I've started watching some of your writing streams, and it's
Oh,
just it's
okay.
great because you're bringing in the structure, the story, you know,
Yeah.
kind of like, hey, this is, you know, narrative
Nuts and bolts.
voice, you know,
Yeah.
um, and where I kind of want to try to bring in that other element. It's like,
Right.
hey, what is motivating you to write this story? Where, you know,
Yeah.
kind more of the method, you know, it's
Right.
like the method acting, I guess you would say, to like
Right.
really,
Right.
it's
Your
like,
center.
because
Your center. Where's your emotional center?
yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I think that once you start getting people into that, and I think
Uh-huh.
we've both tried it, did it, and that's
Yeah.
the addictive part of writing. And I think
Yeah. It
that
is. It is.
For Comic Skate, it's going to be huge because once you get a taste of that, it's addictive,
Yeah.
and you want to finish it. And then it's like
Right.
you won't
Right.
have people saying, "Oh, I'm working on my book," and you know, I'm getting there. And it's
Yeah.
like, I mean,
Yeah.
I've been guilty of it myself, where it's like I'm
Right.
looking around and I'm like, oh, gotta get motivated.
Well,
But then,
the thing that inspires you is something like this. This is what inspires you. It's when you see people who have a genuine affection for the characters they're writing. And you could tell that these people cared about those characters that they wrote. Because when you don't care about the characters you're writing, you could tell because of the casualness that happens. There's a casualness to whatever happens to them. You don't feel like there's any weight to it. You know, there's a
right.
famous CG comic book where somebody got killed, and they just introduced him that comic book, and it was like they killed Kenny. You know, it's that same joke. You remember the
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
Well, it was that same energy, but here if you don't, I mean, there's a character introduced. I won't tell you who it is, but there's a character introduced, and he gets killed off almost immediately, and it's hilarious. It's hilarious because you know, and it's obvious that they brought him in just to kill him off, and that should be like a throw. It was a little odd, but I can see the point of it. I understand why they did it, but it was this moment that they're like, we need to complete this arc right here, and but there's other things. There was other things that were like referenced. They brought in these characters, but when they brought these characters in, unlike the movie that shall not be named, okay, when they brought these characters in, they brought them in as those characters that you remember.
Okay.
And there's some cut scenes at the end. There's two of them. A lot of people left after the first cut scene. And I left. I was out in the lobby, and I grabbed my friend, and I was like, I think there's one more. We gotta watch to the end, but not because of I just had an instinct. I was like, they didn't set up the series. They didn't set up what's going to happen next, and I know they knew that they had a winner on their hands. They had
Oh
to have
yeah.
seen when they saw this. They had to have seen that they had a winner, so they would want to open up the possibilities. And so I took her back in there, and there was a cut scene. I was right, and it was worth seeing. But it kind of set things up for future if they
And
go that far.
I think watching these studios fail, like the
Yeah,
Ghostbusters movie was terrible. I
it
mean,
was horrific.
you want it to do well just because it's like you
Yeah,
remember Ghostbusters, you have fondness for the franchise, But
Yeah.
even with, say, Cowboy Bebop right now, it's like you see
Yeah.
that, I'm
Right.
seeing the reviews. I watched some of the footage. It really
Mhm.
looked like a fever dream of
Yeah.
natural
Yeah.
born killers. I mean, that's what immediately came to my mind. I'm like, that's not it. But I
No.
think I think
No.
what's interesting going forward is that you're just seeing that there's a difference between
Yeah.
brand abuse and then this. I mean, this sounds great. Like,
Right.
I'm definitely going to check it out this weekend, but like,
Well, one thing that I want to point out, and I pointed this out to my friend. I was like, there's a difference between uh, making a movie to make a buck and making a movie because you feel like it needs to be made. And this felt like from the beginning to the end, like they they saw. I felt like this happened because of 2016. Because they were in that
mhm.
movie, but they were contractually in that movie. You could tell they were miserable to be in that movie. But there was music at the beginning of this that would have only been picked up by Dan Aykroyd.
Right.
I mean, with his blues background, because it was like no modern director would have picked that song out. That had to be Dan Aykroyd, and you could just see all the way through it. You could just see like little touches that all of them were involved in this. That all of them
All the
were
old
on
cast
board with
was?
this. The whole cast,
Huh.
except for Rick
Well,
Moranis. I was disappointed they didn't get Rick Moranis, but he was available. I don't know why they didn't get him. Maybe he's Rick Moranis. He does his own thing, but
right.
I was
I
disappointed they didn't get him. But they got everybody else, including one in a cameo that they obviously couldn't get for the main movie, but they made sure they got her one way or shape or form. But I just maybe might have spoiled something. Anyway, but the thing about it is though is why this matters is this is what we want. This is what we asked for. This is what we wanted Star Wars to be. There's a reason why people cried at the season finale of Mandalorian season 2. There's a reason people cried when that reveal happened. And I did because it's like there's a part of you that wanted this for so long, and to actually see it, it's a complete total sense of validation and like relief. It's like this pressure that you felt that you never got resolved, that you finally see it happen. Because as fans, what do we do once the story's over? Does the story end, or do we continue it in our heads?
Yeah, you definitely continue in your head. Like, what are they going to do next? I can't wait.
Right,
What's the next
right.
story?
And and
It's that,
and, that's why sequels have diminishing returns, because as the sequels go on, you're like, well, that's not what would have happened in my head canon, you know.
right.
But the truth of the matter is once I watched this movie, my head canon changed to fit it, because it was just that on it. It was
Right,
perfect.
right.
Uh, but you can just tell Jason Reitman grew up on that set, and hung out, and he knew all these people were probably his honorary uncles, and there's just
Right.
affection from the beginning all the way to the end of it. And
Ah,
and there's a lot of modern directing shit that's like crept into movies that you see over and over again that just drive you crazy, was not in this movie. you know like,
yeah,
like
right.
like you didn't feel like any dialogue was written by Joss Whedon. you know it didn't have that Whedon-esque dialogue, and
Oh,
and
Joss Whedon, like a lot of the stuff. I mean, it was funny because when
yeah,
all the stuff with him came out, and then what
yeah.
was funny was like it
Mhm.
at that point it was like it gave everybody permission to say what they wanted to say about him
Oh
professionally,
yeah, oh
and,
yeah.
and it was like, and I think you see a
It's like
lot
you
of that
can't
in the
hurt me anymore. I'm gonna say what I've
right,
always wanted to
but
say.
yeah, it was so funny because and you even see it in the Cowboy Bebop thing, very Whedon-esque. It's like very
Yeah.
deliberately sarcastic, like, look what we're doing, we're making this movie, oh, ha
And
ha
it's
ha.
self-referential. We know exactly what the joke is, and we're just gonna say it out loud.
Right. right.
I guess so tedious.
But I think the big lesson that I think Hollywood's going to learn
Yeah.
as movies like this do better and better,
Hopefully
and yeah,
learn.
right. I think they will.
We
I
know
think
from
word
that
of
movie.
mouth.
We know from that thing that Ethan kind of pointed out that there's money coming from our government to subsidize this nastiness that's happening in our
Oh
pop
yeah,
culture.
The ESG. Yeah,
ESGs.
yeah,
Yeah.
ESG. The way that looks to me, it's like, dude,
Mhm.
if Comicsgate wanted to make a ton of money, just
Yeah.
short every single one of those companies, and people will be like, "What is this based on?" I'll be like, "This is GameStop all over again, man. We're gonna
Right.
call bets
Right.
that these are bad." You know,
Right. Yeah.
it's like the worst of subprime mortgages and
Right.
freaking
Right.
remember the Energy Star? Like this is what it
Yeah.
reminds me of.
Yeah.
It's like, ooh, Disney's got 4 Energy Star points. Yay. But
Well. The thing about it is though, is there was a woke comment made in this movie that I thought that didn't bother me, and it's the first time I've heard a woke comment made in a movie in a long time that I didn't go what, or man,
pull
I
you
can't
right
believe
out,
it's in there.
yeah.
But this character made a woke comment, and it fit because I'm like, that character would have made that comment, and
Right.
it was fine because it wasn't like Paul's speech, or you're a toxic male or something like that. It was a woke comment, but it was like a comment that would have happened at that situation with that character. And
Right.
when you understand your characters and you move them around the world with this internal integrity that they would say these things at this time. I have an SJW in my comic, and she's one of
Hmm.
the best things in it because she makes these statements that are internal. She has internal integrity, so when she makes these statements, it doesn't like wrench it. It doesn't like wait a second. Because it's her character, but
Yeah,
she's funny. She's funny because of it.
yeah, and those are great because then you have a dueling dynamic between.
Right.
And
Right.
you can, and what's great about it, and this is what I think, we see it in comics, especially like the mainstream
Yeah.
stuff so often, is that
Right.
they'll take and say this, they'll steel man. I mean, literally, like with Captain Marvel, they'll steel man what
Yeah.
they're going for, and then they
Right.
make this limp straw man of the other argument, and then they'll
Yeah.
mischaracterize it in the, you know,
Right. Right.
but what's amazing to me is that from a
Yeah.
writing standpoint, if you kind of like sidestep a little bit, I'm gonna kind of go off a little tangent. Sorry,
Oh,
if you
go
don't
ahead. Go
mind.
ahead. Go ahead.
But it's like from a philosophical standpoint, it's like, they say all the
Mhm.
time, comics, like there's no budget. Your
Right.
imagination and what you put on the paper, that's
Yeah.
everything. And so, I mean, it's limitless. And so in that situation, it's like, why not put the best conservative argument and your best liberal argument? And it's like, if you're woke
Right.
and that's what you believe, you
Yeah.
would want to write that against and let's look at characterization of villains.
Right.
Terrible villains right now.
Yeah.
And
Right.
it's like, yeah, you want, I mean, I don't think,
Mhm.
like, if these characters are really racist, how come we haven't heard anything offensive? Like,
Right.
it's like,
Right.
make me hate this person.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. There's you're talking about putting arguments side by side. Um, there was his name was Spurgeon. It's called the Prince of Preachers. And he was asked one time, young man, how are you going to give a defense of the gospel? And this older lady asked him when he was a young preacher. And he's like, ma'am, he's like, so why would I defend a lion? I just turned him loose. And that's, and what that means is if your argument is strong enough, if you believe in your argument, then you should have no fear of putting it side by side with any other argument. You
Oh,
shouldn't have any
absolutely.
fear of gatekeeping anything out of the arena. You if your argument truly is as strong as you believe it to be, then just stick that dog into the pen, and it's going to come out the winner.
Oh yeah, and you see it all the time when of course
Yeah.
there's always been politics in comics, and it's like, I'm gonna
No.
reference this again because I literally finished the Absolute Volume 1 Sandman, and
Okay.
the last chapter there, he literally advocates for assisted suicide with
Oh man,
you probably know what I'm talking about. What's her name?
good
It's
comment.
something. What's
Thank
that?
you. Kashuko Papashanko. Freedom of speech, let the best ideas win.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Oh,
Shout
but
out.
yeah, but yeah, I mean, you look at it and it's like, what is it? Is it Metamorpho Girl or
Mm,
Element Girl or something? She was,
okay.
why is it? Anyways, she gets her powers from the god Ra, and she's,
Okay.
it's Element Girl. That's what it was. Element Girl just
Oh,
came to
okay.
me.
Okay.
She's kind of like Metamorpho, female version, but anyway, she's like in a lot of pain. She can't use her powers right anymore because she's
Thank
old.
you, Vince. Yeah, that's a lot easier, dude. We'll call you Vince. Good. Thank you. But yeah, she got her
Nice.
powers from Ra. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
But yeah, it's like basically like she's just a wreck, and like she can't really
Yeah.
function in life right because of her powers and they're malfunctioning. And it's like
Yeah.
you really like you go through the whole thing where, like, I mean, I hope you don't mind if I spoil it a little bit. She basically, death shows up and is like, well, if you want to die, just ask Ra. She's like, well, how do I
Uh,
find him? She's like, he's the freaking sun. Just ask him. So she
uh,
goes out in the deck, and they artfully have her like praying, and then she turns into stone and then dust.
yeah.
And
Right.
by the time you're done, it's like assisted suicide, very left leaning,
Yeah.
inclination
Right.
to
Right.
advocate for that. And so here's a guy tells a story, shows it. It's like,
Yeah.
this is the kind of situation where this would be necessary. How can you disagree with this? And so it's
Uh-huh.
like, where is that appeal? It's like, you know, I mean, there's no appeal, there's no persuasion, and
Yeah.
that's what I think. I think it's this steel man certainty. It's like, I
Yeah.
mean, I had the pleasure of sitting through a forced adversity chat with was it Nerdette's newsstand, and
Uh,
I
yeah.
don't want to say I say that kind of lunchroom
Mhm.
nudging him, but
Right.
no,
Right.
Dane's actually an all right dude. He's like, I
Okay.
mean, my issue with him is that he comes at it. This is a fact before we
Uh-huh.
even get started. So it's
Yeah.
like, if you, I mean,
If you argue
it,
with it, then you're wrong. Right.
well, it's
Yeah.
it's like negotiating with a terrorist. But before we negotiate, I have 15 preconditions. You know, if you
well,
do
well,
all
that,
these things, then we'll talk.
right.
And it's like,
It's
well,
like this movie here, as opposed to 2016. And I'm one of the few humans on the planet that actually gave 2016 a shot. I watched it multiple times. I put myself through it multiple times. I even watched the extended cut. I am that big of a masochist, okay? And the extended cut was just more of the same. And it was like, yeah, you should have left that stuff out, you know? I mean,
right,
you
right.
very rarely see an extended cut and not see something that, like, man, I wish you left that in. No, everything that he left out, he should have left out, okay, including an extended dance scene. All right, anyway, but you watch Ghostbusters 2016. Sorry for mentioning it, but when you watch that movie, there's this certainty about everything that they do, that we're funny here. We know we're funny. We know we're being funny. The
Right.
self-referential, and it. All the men were idiots, and all the women were just wonderful science nerds. Who could figure anything out, and except for the black lady, who was really not done well. Okay, let's just say
Right,
that.
right.
But then you see this movie here, and this is direct. This is right here is direct uh response to that movie. And you see in this movie here, there was no politics in it at all. And the characters had self-doubt about themselves. The characters sometimes acted mean. The characters were some they had conflict, they had interpersonal, they had failures. The first time they tried to capture a ghost, it's in the trailer. It doesn't end
Hmm.
well. But the thing about it is, though, is that certainty is not there. And
Well, are
and
you sure? Are you sure there's no? Are you sure there's no politics, or is it just it's not on surface level?
it is nowhere in this movie. It's nowhere in this movie. The cut scene at the end did feel a little politically motivated, all the way at the very, very end. But it
Hmm.
wasn't. It was a positive message, and I didn't have a problem with it. But the thing about it is this: the comparing the two. One thought it was funny, and Wink nudged at the camera all the time that it was funny, and then
Hmm.
and it just was egregiously hard to watch. This one here had some genuinely funny moments, but it's because they understood that Ghostbusters at its heart was a drama.
Right, right. And it doesn't presume that you are here, well, you're here
Yeah,
because it's Ghostbusters, and now we're gonna
right.
give you this humor, and if you don't like it, you're an idiot. I mean,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
and I think that, kind of go back to what I was kind of trying to get
Hmm.
at earlier was that I think after all these lessons learned, after these
Yeah,
movies coming out of the
yeah,
pandemic, I think what these companies, hopefully, the right
yeah,
lesson they'll get is that, a brand isn't just, hey, they attach to this name, these characters. It's like,
yeah,
no, you got to
yeah.
dig deeper. What's the value? And I
Right,
think that's, but and what's crazy is like that's always the thing that gets cut at, they whittle at first. It's like
right,
when you,
right.
it's like every time they reboot Peter Parker, we lose a little bit more of Peter
Yeah,
Parker
right,
until
right,
it's just vanilla white guy jumping around in pajamas, and then you're like,
right,
well, yeah, bring on Miles Morales. Like, give me
right.
something that has something.
Well, see, the thing about it is it's just happened all across pop culture. Is see, I wrote fan fiction. That's where I cut my teeth.
Hmm.
And I have some. I even had a review earlier from the website. I haven't updated since 2010, and I still get reviews all the time. But I did like several IPs. I would switch from IP to IP, just whichever intrigued me. And but the thing that I learned very early on is if you're going to take an IP out or for a walk, you better know the IP to the
Right.
extent that, like, if I wrote a mash fic that was really, really well received, and I enjoyed
Okay.
writing it, and it's well received. But I watched a whole bunch of mash shows to get it, because I felt like my mash knowledge wasn't, to the level I needed, and so I did my homework. I watched these mash, and I put a lot of little things in there that these people would say, that these people would reference, that would be in this universe.
Hmm.
And but it took me a long time to get there. I didn't write it till I was sure I was all the way in the universe before I wrote. And you see, but you see them going straight to the writing without doing the research, without doing, and like this movie here was very, very, very well researched. I mean, these are people that watch those movies religiously. You could tell. I
Okay.
mean, there was like there was this big reveal towards the end. I won't spoil it for you, but when it happened the way it should have happened, and the things that ensued from that reveal, just it rang like, I call it ringing the bell.
Okay.
When I call it ringing the bell of authenticity. When you see something that you know is done right, that it's
You got
that's
that
true.
payoff at the end. Yeah.
Exactly, it has that truth to the world, truth to the characters, truth to what would have happened, and and truth to what these people would have done. I call it ringing the bell. It's dialogue. If the dialogue is right, it rings the bell. I call it the ringing the bell of authenticity. And when you, as
Hmm.
a writer, and when you wrote something authentic, you know. Especially dialogue. Dialogue in particular. When you write something, you know that person would have said. You know they would have said it.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to keep rewriting till you get to that. But when people are lazy, when people don't, and the first thing that they do is they retcon things to basically to erase canon, to erase back history, erase characters from this universe because they don't want to research it. They don't want to get in those heads, and they don't want to do something authentic. That's the first thing they do is they erase stuff.
Well, and that's the funny thing about it is that when you look at it and you say, okay, you're erasing everything that came before, and this is the
Right.
difference between,
Right.
I would say, Brian Michael Bendis' Miles Morales
Yeah.
versus every other reboot. Because when you look at it, he says, okay, we're wiping the canon. This is new, different universe, completely my Spider-Man. But
Right.
he obviously went back and he went into the Wayback Machine and read his back issues and said, wait a
Yeah.
minute, here's what everybody's seen from Spider-Man. Here's
Right.
what Peter Parker was. I'm taking a left here.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so then when people would say, oh, he's just a tokenized character, people would say, you haven't read the book because he differs here, here, here. I mean, I think the uncle influence with the Prowler, I think that's pretty cool. It's like,
Yeah.
you know, your uncle goes, I mean, I haven't read all the issues,
Right.
but I got some general knowledge from the Spider-Verse stuff, and I was like, well, that whole cautionary tale of like you literally
Yeah.
watch your uncle go down, and it's like, oh man, you
Right.
know, a little different than Uncle Ben.
Aaron Jordan, you get with Aaron Jordan, he's like an expert on Miles Morales,
Okay.
and the mistakes that have been made with him. But anyway, but you know, the thing about why this is going to matter, is if we support this movie, what we're supporting is we're supporting corporations. We can fund you better than the government can fund you.
Right. Absolutely.
We can
Absolutely.
give you money that the government is not going to give you for woke points. We are the ultimate goal that you should be aiming at, not woke points, not ESG. We are the ones that our hearts and our if you get our hearts, we will open our wallets. And
Absolutely.
if this movie makes enough money, corporations will stop following that siren song and start going after the fans again.
And
That's
that's what's crazy about it, because it's like I try to put myself, like, you know,
yeah,
as I was, one of the reasons I watched Dane's podcast was I was
yeah,
like,
yeah,
I was trying to be like, all right, let me try to put myself in his frame of mind. And so, because I'm just
you can't
like,
do it.
well, here's where I would ask Dane, and I would, you know, if he wants to
Okay.
answer me on Twitter, elsewhere, whatever, I have nothing against him. I've actually talked to
Mhm.
him in private. He's a cool cat. It's just,
Yeah.
I know this sounds crazy, like I'm not
Yeah.
ready. Anyway, but the thing that drives me crazy is that, okay, if this is what you believe fundamentally, morally, like representation is
Have the
everything,
integrity.
how can you sit there and read this stuff and say, I mean, it's heartless, it's derivative, it's like self-replicating, it's like,
Yeah.
right,
Right.
obviously this is story and script writing by committee. All right, we
Yeah.
need a bully, we need a
Mhm.
minority, we need, you know, and it's like you can predict the finish. And it's
Yeah.
like, look, man, it, like, there's a point, there should be a point to having Vita Ayala being a writer. And it's like, if you're gonna put her in a box and say, okay, this is where we want you to go and no further, it's like, no,
Yeah.
man, she should be doing some wild, like,
Yeah. Right.
I mean, just some crazy Alan Moore style story, and let it go, where, I mean,
But see,
because, you know,
they don't expect that of her. They don't give her expectations. She can just take a dump in a box and put it on their desk and they'll put it out because they don't expect that of her. The only value that she has to their company is the fact that she's queer and brown.
And I think for her, I think the thing that, and maybe I'm projecting something onto her, but if I was in that position, I would be
Yeah.
resentful as hell. I'd be like,
But you
you
think
guys
you
aren't
would.
even.
You think they would because you don't want me for anything except my arbitrary characteristics, my surface characteristics. That's why you look at CG. We have true diversity in CG. True diversity. We've got gay, straight, we've got men, women, all races in CG. And they feel welcome here because we're like, what can you do? What kind of work can you put out? It's true meritocracy. What these idiots don't understand is all races are awesome.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
All
absolutely.
races are awesome. All genders are awesome. You know, they all have quality. They all have something to contribute. And if they're good, then they'll find an audience. We don't have to help them. We don't have to
Right.
clear the playing field. We don't have to like cripple ourselves as white people to give them the opportunity. We don't have to. They can
No.
do fine on their own. Check out the black culture that happened before the civil rights legislation. They went from slavery to millionaires in just less than 2 generations.
Oh
They
yeah.
were
I
doing
mean,
fine. They were doing fine on their own. They didn't need us to help them. As a matter of fact, I really honestly, my personal belief is the Democrats wanted to cripple them. So they did the civil rights legislation to make sure that they voted their own, their own, useless existence for the rest of their lives. You know,
yeah. Oh man, if you read Frederick Douglass's writings about the Republican Party back then,
yeah,
you
yeah,
would wonder what happened, because it's like
right.
he says he said he would rather die than vote for a Democrat. Like he would always, the Republican Party would be the
Which was created by abolitionists, by the way.
right. And but I think at the same time they need to, like with this Kyle Rittenhouse thing, and
Yeah.
I mean, we're kind of, I mean, I'll bring it back to Ghostbusters here in a minute.
No problem, no
But no,
problem,
no,
no
it's
problem.
like it's like, it's like me as a libertarian, I'm all
Uh-huh.
for,
Yeah.
the Bill of Rights is not to give me permission. It's to stop
No.
the government from telling
Stop
me
the
what to do.
government from yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
it restrains the government. So when they say, because I've heard so many arguments, and you see it just oozing out on Twitter. It's like, here goes the keyboard warriors, and
Mhm.
and they're saying, well, you'd feel different about it if it was a black man. I'm like, no,
The
he should have
same
a
day,
gun.
that Kyle Ritter was acquitted, a young black man who was accused of 5 murders was acquitted. The
Yeah.
same day, and nobody covered it
Well, I think a
because
lot
it
of,
did not fit the narrative. Because they want these people mad, they want these people rioting, they want these people burning cities down.
oh,
They want
absolutely.
it.
And it was, what's crazy about it is when Matt Taibbi has a great book on this called Hate Inc. If you have a chance, check it out. Even has
Uh,
it on audiobook. He
okay.
talks about, like, literally, like, MSNBC and Fox are basically like Newport and Marlboro. It's
Yeah.
like they're both toxic if ingested, because one
Right.
will tell you half the information,
Yeah.
the other one will tell you, they selectively edit. And the whole thing is they want a captive audience. They want you to be
Yeah.
riled up and ready to watch the next thing. It's crazy.
On Fox's behalf, there are some people at Fox that I think are there's nobody in the other ones that I can listen to, but there are some people on Fox that I think do try to go down the middle. I mean, I honestly believe that. But
Uh,
not all of them, but there. I mean, yeah, listen to Hannity. Caveat emptor with a Hannity, but
well, there's so
for
much
the
egg
most
on
part,
the.
yeah.
Oh, sorry, buddy.
Oh well, I mean, you listen to Tucker sometimes. I mean, Tucker He hits both sides,
Yeah,
but
Tucker's
he's one of
Tucker's
the
pretty
very few.
good.
He's one of the very
Um,
few that do that. But
yeah, like there's on MSNBC, they have so much egg on their face because of
oh,
the whole Russiagate thing falling
oh,
apart,
oh man,
and I'm like, just say it once, like,
yeah.
hey, we were wrong. It's like
But
we
they
were
can't.
we're not
They
wrong,
can't.
but just we were incorrect. We didn't have all the information, and then
What's the
you know,
reviews? What's the reviews of this movie? The early reviews. The people that reviewed
uh,
this movie early on, and there was a whole bunch of them that were saying, "Oh, this is all fan service. This
no,
is all fan service." These people, the people that hated 2016 because of his representation, blah blah blah, are gonna love this movie, and that's bad. That's a bad thing. But then you watch this movie, you watch this actual movie, and this is the same movie that they watched,
mm-hmm.
and none of that is in there. None of it. They lied. They lied about in their reviews. They lied about what's in this movie because they did not want it to succeed. Because they will not. And the thing about it is they're not going to make 2016 succeed by destroying this movie.
No,
What
it's mutually shared destruction. You bombed our
mutually
movie, we're
assured
gonna,
destruction?
yeah, it's just, this doesn't deserve to exist because you hated ours, and it's,
Yeah,
yeah, but if
yeah,
we all know how that would have went, if 2016 would have sold like gangbusters, we'd get another one and another one, and
yeah.
this story would
Right,
have never been
right.
told. And
Uh,
that's what's crazy to me is just there's so like, um but yeah, kind of return back, and when I was watching that podcast and I kind of brought it up to
yeah.
you with
Uh huh.
Nerdette's Newsstand,
Uh huh.
it
Yeah.
was just the assertions, the assumptions. It's like, well, comics have always been political.
No.
Media has always been liberal.
The
And
difference
it,
there's a different definition to what political is.
well, but the thing is I'm not going to sit here and I'm not going to make the room smoky and obfuscate. Well, what's the real definition of
Right.
anything?
Right.
I mean, it's like, look, let's settle on a definition, and that's why I kind of went on there because he started talking about Kami Mark, and I was like,
Hmm.
let him play the video. Why don't you debate him? All he asked, and the thing was,
Yeah.
it wasn't even like a debate. Mark
Right.
was just basically like, I don't even really want to debate you. Let's make an agreement on what
Yeah.
woke is. Just agree on what
Right.
is woke. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
we're gonna. And then he's like, well, it really doesn't mean anything. And it's like, well, then
Right.
why take the label?
Right.
Why?
Exactly.
Why? Yeah,
Exactly.
I'm woke. I'm an SJW, but you say it doesn't mean anything. So,
Right. Well, it's like for instance, I've been asked like surreptitiously, under the table, if I would ever debate Ethan Van Sciver, because obviously we're on the opposite ends of things, of certain things, and he has kind of marked me as being opposed to his viewpoint, and I just answered him. I was like, why would I? If I don't feel a need to do so, because I believe in what I'm saying, and I don't think there's a debate there. But the
yeah,
thing about it is if I walk with integrity and I say, and if I'm wrong, I correct myself. I like the thing he was watching on his stream was an apology video, because I realized I felt some shame when I found out that he had seen my video, and I was like, why did I feel shame? I felt shame because I'd been talking behind his back, basically.
okay,
The way I phrased things was because it was behind his back, not to his face. And to find out that he'd been watching things, I was like, well, I need to apologize for the way I've been saying things, because I've not been saying things in a way that was above board. But my message stayed the same.
yeah,
What I believe stayed the same, but methodology definitely has to change. But at the end of the day, you know, when you see something with authenticity, you know it. And as long as I'm authentic, as long as I am true to what I believe and I am consistent in what I believe, like this movie is, like back to the movie. But as long as you're authentic, people will respond to it. They will.
Yeah,
And
I don't.
yeah, maybe not
I
in the
do.
big numbers, maybe not in as big numbers as if you're just like willy nilly picking fights with everybody. But
I didn't. When I watched this video, I didn't. I didn't really. You know, it kind of veered toward he was kind of getting. I wouldn't
mhm,
say he was mad at you or like.
yeah,
You know, he seemed annoyed. It's kind of like.
right,
It's kind of
yeah,
like, all right, this guy has some beefs, and he kind of says he's like, yeah, you don't like my stuff, you could diss the crap out of me, like whatever. He's like,
right,
you're
right,
entitled to your opinion. It makes me better. But then it
uh-huh,
was kind of like, you know, he kind of seized on the cult leader thing, and it does make sense because he gets a rash of crap about that. They think
mhm,
Comicsgate is a bunch of mindless drones,
right, right,
and everybody just walks in lockstep. And I'm like, yeah, tell Malin that he tell Malin
yeah,
he's a drone. Like, I've
right,
never seen
right.
him not say his opinion, or Shane
No,
Davis, or
no,
any of these guys, really. I mean,
right,
and but it's a convenient narrative because it's
yeah.
like, oh, they're all drones. It's like, oh,
But
these
see,
poor people, they're not very smart.
I made it clear. That was disingenuous of him because I made it clear what I was saying was they perceive that you're a cult leader, but I wasn't saying he was a cult leader. I was like, what? But if they think if they take you down, that they take the rest of us down. And I was like, but cult of personality is it can happen with anywhere, with any time, with anybody. And that's the point I'm making. We can't be a cult of personality.
Well, we're not. And that's
Yeah,
the thing, is that that's the narrative on Twitter. Ethan Van Sciver is the one guy. I was like,
right.
wait, last I checked, there's two guys behind Ethan that
Yeah.
both have over $200,000 campaigns. And
Mm-hmm.
try to find something about Inglorious Rex or Godlike. Try to find something on Twitter. Unless you go
Mm-hmm.
directly to Shane Davis, unless you go directly to John Malin, you will
Yeah.
not see it. You won't. I'm not
Well,
going to say it's like,
they call it Malin all the time, but they won't mention Shane Davis because Shane Davis has Yonzi.
yeah, and the
They
thing of,
don't even admit he'd exist.
well, I'm not gonna necessarily buy into that. It's like a
Right.
systemic
Right.
agenda or nefarious fingers or a
Yeah.
nefarious feet or a foot, but
Right. Right.
but at
Right.
the
Right.
same time, it's like, if we ignore those two,
Yeah.
well, we just got to take out Ethan. That take
Right.
out the symbolic figure, then we can just dismiss it in summary. Just yeah,
Right.
that was a great
See
experiment. It doesn't work.
that's my
Yeah,
point. That's my point. Is if they find a way to disgrace him, then they can just completely totally dismiss the whole entire movement. And
absolutely.
that was the point I was making. Um, but and I offered to anybody in the chat that wants to ask a question about the movie that's non-spoiler, go ahead and ask the questions. I'll answer them. Just to get back to the narrative there, but
Right.
the thing, yeah. But the end of the day, is all we want is authenticity. That's all anybody wants. And
Well, yeah, and to dovetail it back to bring everything kind of full circle, it's like,
yeah, right.
that's what they did in 2016 was they ignored, they
Ignore.
dismissed everybody who's like, no, 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 we care about Ghostbusters.
Right.
And this is something I learned back in the day working at Comcast.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
hindsight, it's like, yeah, I was working for the evil MSN machine, but whatever. But the first thing they taught us, like, I was the guy that had to do TV tech support. And
Oh,
so
okay.
as far
Okay.
as far as I know, I mean, this was a job I got just out of the military. And it's like, as far as I
Yeah.
know, I still have the annual sales record over there. And
Oh,
people are like,
okay.
what do you mean? Like, how did you do that? I'm like, they're like, you're just a tech guy. I'm like, I
Yeah.
had to fix their problem,
Right.
address their issue, then make the sale. And it's
Right.
like,
Right.
the first thing they taught us, to kind of make a long story short, they taught us that, like, you're going to get cussed at every single day. They are going to just dog you out. But you
Right.
got to remember, they are that way because they're passionate about our products.
Yeah,
And it's
right.
like DC's lost complete vision of that. Marvel as well. It's
Yeah,
like when you have people like Heather Ontos, and I don't want to vilify her, she just doesn't understand. They're pissed at you because they want it to be great. It's not
mm,
because they hate the agenda. I mean, what you're trying to say, it's like surface level,
yeah,
having everybody getting along, multiple races, life is good. Who's
yeah.
against that? Who could be for racism? Come on.
Right.
And but let's get to the
But
heart of the
it's
issue.
that's basically what's called an ad hoc argument. It's ad hoc, you know,
Yeah,
or it's ad hominem. I'm sorry, ad hominem. Where you conflate two things that don't have anything to do with each other to prove a point. But you know, think
but
about it
yeah,
is
and then they're getting mad because the folks at Ghostbusters, the
yeah,
folks who are in charge of the Ghostbusters franchise were like,
yeah,
no, let's take this in. So these guys want, the original cast. I mean,
hmm,
obviously they had lightning in a bottle for 2 movies.
yeah,
And let's make a movie with some heart because that's what Ghostbusters was. And that gets
yeah,
back to what brand, like what we were talking about earlier. Brand is the value. It's like value is the virtue. It's
yeah.
like Ghostbusters is about a bunch of crazy guys like trying to take on like supernatural forces. I mean, does any of
The
this
thing
make
about
sense?
but the thing about Ghostbusters that this movie understood is these were the worst guys possible to do so.
Right.
I mean, these guys were jackasses, you know, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, I mean, they had incredible tech. They figured out incredible technology, but these guys were, you know, and and uh and this movie understood that. They understood that sometimes the only people that are available or the only people available to be heroes are the ones that that are like put in that position and act. It
Right,
has nothing to do with suitability. It has to do with availability and strength of will.
right,
And that is at the heart. That is the heart of heroism. Is not your suitability, but your availability and your willingness to do so. And and when you see that happen, when you see that it's authentic when you see it. And
right.
and one thing about the 2016 movie was it was right after Harold Ramis died, and you saw them like for Harold and things like that on it. And but you're like, please don't mention Harold Ramis and attach it to this, you know. But
Yeah,
this movie, this was a Harold Ramis tribute. This
but
movie had it. This movie did it right. This movie is something that his kids and his family and these men that were in this movie, that may you know the people that were in this movie that had some attachment to him. They did it right, and so you know at the end of the day, what I'm saying, and the reason I did this, I jumped on here to do this, was I want people to know everything, every fear that you had. I can tell you, they're wrong. They're invalidated. This is what we wanted. This is
nice.
what we were hoping for. This is everything that I had built up in my head as headcanon. And since I saw the trailer last year and I had this sinking feeling in my stomach, I was like, "Oh my God, they're going to rape it again. They're going to destroy it again, and they're going to desecrate it again." And I don't know if I can be there for that, but they didn't. These people love this property. There's love from the beginning all the way to the end, and every little thing is taken care of. Every little, all that little music, all that little eerie music you heard in the background, they put it in this movie. All the
Nice.
connective tissue is in this movie, and this is not a spoiler, but Ray Parker Jr.'s song is in the closing credits, and I mean
Mm-hmm.
it was they put it on. They didn't put it in the other movie. People don't realize that they didn't have that song in the other movie. At least I didn't hear it. I don't remember hearing it.
And probably because Huey Lewis told him not to do that or it'd sue him again.
Well, no, they was in this movie.
Yeah.
But Huey Lewis is going to get proceeds from it. But
Oh, I
yeah,
bet.
it's in this movie.
He crushed those guys last time, and it was like,
Well,
I don't know if you've heard
you
the story
listen to
behind it.
I Want a New Drug and listen to the Ghostbusters side by side, he had a point.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Oh, yeah.
they I've heard them played side by side and they synchronize. Okay.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was like a sped up version, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Oh no, it's same tempo and everything. It really same chord progressions and everything. Now there's a part in the breakdown in the middle. The Gust busted makes me feel good.
Mm-hmm.
That part doesn't. That part was like the original part that was in that song. But yeah, it was so close. He had it. But anyway, so that's what I'm saying. That's why I want to hop here on and say this movie's good.
And
Don't
see,
have any
I
fear
came
going to
on
see it.
perfect timing. You were like looking at me weird, like, what are you doing here? You didn't see the movie? I got to play the perfect fool. The perfect fool. Like, really? Let's do this.
All right. No problem,
Yeah.
man. I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate the conversation. Now you can come on anytime, man. You can come on
I
any
had to
live
jump in
streams or
feet
anything.
first because I just kept missing it because I was on overtime. They'd be like, yeah, you're gonna get overtime today.
Yeah.
And then you'd be streaming. You'd be like, why? You keep talking about coming on, but you don't come on. So I had overtime today, but like I just got home, so I was like, bag it, I'm coming on.
All right, I appreciate it, man. I enjoyed talking to you. We gotta do this again sometime. We gotta do this again, man.
All right.
Anyway, I appreciate it. So go see this movie, guys. Support it. It's what we want. We should support it. So all right, that's all I got.
Yeah.
All right, you have a good afternoon, Mr. Eastman. I appreciate you coming on.
Take care, Mr. T Bunny, sir.
We got a comment. All right, Vince. Thank you, man. Let me go ahead. This one comment. Thank you, man. Appreciate it, Vince. You can come on anytime, dude. I'm good.
Nice.
All right. So you guys have a good afternoon.
All right. Take care, man.
Tell me what's on your mind.